the disclaimer.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. This is a Bicycle Engineering Committee, and I need to read this to all members. Members of the board may participate remotely by telephone or other electronic means due to the local public health emergency level, local coronavirus pandemic declared on March 16, 2020, pursuant to the provisions of Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. A portion of this meeting may be closed to the public pursuant to Minnesota Statute Section 130. Am I doing the right one or 130.05?
That's fine. Usually it's in the chat, but that's good.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So this, I hope people had a chance to look at the agenda. What we have are two proposals. One is Cedar Lake Road Bridge replacement with Alexander Cato, Abdullahi Abukar, and I think it's Mesarek Wolana. I apologize if I messed that up. And the second one is the Minneapolis Park Board trail maintenance, and that's Tyler Peterson. So I think Millicent right now has put up the Cedar Lake Road Bridge replacement. And is Alex here? Alexander?
Hey, I'm here.
All right. Would you like to present?
Awesome. I will. I'll pull up the screen in a second. Alexander Cato, Transportation Planner. We came at you all with a 0% concept, so now we have a 10% concept to share with you all. Abdullahi and Meseret are both engineers, and they'll be on the call. And then we have a few folks from TKDA, our consultant group, that are on the call as well if there's additional questions. I'm going to hop in and just get right into it. I'm just going to share my screen. Does anyone have any issues visually hearing me or seeing me? Okay, I'm going to take the silence as a confirmation.
We can hear you and see you, Alexander.
Yes,
Okay.
we can see and hear you.
Okay, great. So yeah, let's just hop right into it. This is an exciting project. We're replacing a bridge that's deteriorated, nearing the end of its useful life. And, obviously this provides an opportunity for us to improve some of the multimodal connections on it. So the bridge was built in 1941. So it's definitely nearing the end of its useful life. So the goals, obviously replacing aging infrastructure, improving bike ped access and safety, maintaining vehicular access, and I know there's maybe some sensitivity to that, and then coordinating with the agency partners. So there's the loose line trail that's adjacent to this, and also BNSF Rail operates under the bridge. So we're coordinating with them. Here's some of the daily usage. So about 1,500 vehicles a day use the bridge. That's actual data taken from the bridge. And then about 460 pedestrians, about 160 cyclists. This is actually a few blocks away off of Penn. There's no bike ped counts on the bridge, so we just used some approximated data. But I know I bike over there and walk over there quite a bit, and I know it's a pretty heavily utilized corridor for multimodal access. Here's the project map again. You can see the red square here represents the area. There are actually two bridges on the Cedar Lake Road. We're just replacing the first one. The second one here still has a few decades of life left. And so when that does near the end of its useful life, it will be replaced, but it will not be a part of this project. The loose line trail, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, does travel through here, connects via the bridges, and then continues on loose line trail into Bryn Mawr Park. So we're coordinating with the park board around these improvements as well, because we all know how important this loose line trail is, and also it does connect into the North Cedar Lake Regional Trail as well. So we want to definitely maintain that connectivity. So these are the existing conditions. I'm sure you all are relatively kind of aware of kind of the general context. We have Cedar Lake Road here, travels north-south. We see the bridge over here on the active rail line, and the loose line trail connects there. These are just a few existing photos of the bridge. I do apologize, they're a little blurry. That's just on a nice day in the fall. Here's a view looking towards the rail tracks. Here's a view from the south end where the current bike lane facilities are. So this is the general proposed improvements. I would say don't focus too much on this intersection. This is still being fine-tuned. We're well aware that there's a lot of challenges with intersections. We want to make sure that the crossings properly address cyclists that may be on this side of the road that want to cross onto the loose line trail. But this is just a high level view of, we're having bike lanes and sidewalks on each side of the facility. They'll travel across the bridge and they'll reconnect into the existing bike facilities on Cedar Lake Road and also on the Loose Line Trail. Here's the existing cross section. So we have about a 6 to 7 foot sidewalk with about a 4-foot railing. Then we have an on-street bicycle facility as a bike lane. It's about 6 feet. We have two 12-foot travel lanes and then the same treatment on the other side of the road. So right now the bridge is 50 feet in width, and our proposed design is actually going to be 56.5 feet in width. So we do have the ability to widen the bridge. We are not widening the travel lanes, though. We're widening the bridge to provide more enhanced bike and ped facilities. A little difficult to see in this visual, but there's bike and ped facilities at the same grade as the bridge deck. And then there'll be a 7-inch raised curb that's about 2 feet wide to provide that physical separation for motorists and cyclists. As you're well aware, in the current design, there's just paint, there's no ball, there's not even bollards, there's no physical separation at all. So this proposed design from a bike ped safety standpoint, I think is much improved. The treatment is the same on the other side of the bridge as well. You will see that there are still 12-foot lanes. We are recommending striping those to be 10-foot with a 2-foot buffer for more storage space for snow and maintenance, and still reducing the physical painted space that motorists have to travel on this bridge down to 10 is our recommended treatment. The screening here is just a proposed concept. I do have a few precedent examples I can show you of other screening treatments we've done around the city. And we're still working through the design of that. So we're definitely open to comments and feedbacks on the screening, but just know that this is not the final design treatment. And we know that this will be a really popular conversation piece for members of the community, for folks in BAC, PAC, et cetera. So definitely open to that, but just don't want to raise anyone's alarms that that this is the final kind of iteration of that. Next steps, we have an open house on October 26th where we're sharing these concepts with the public. We'll have a public website up. And then in the summer of 2022, we'll have a 30% finalized concept, and then we're planning for construction in 2023. That's it for the presentation, and I'll just open it up for questions from the audience. Just one quick thing before I take comments and questions. Did anyone from the city team or from the consultant team have any questions or any comments about the designs before we open it up for feedback from the committee members?
Okay, Alex, can I go ahead and get some people to answer from the committee? I don't hear anybody else. Jesse, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I do. One thing I was going to maybe ask about if for consideration. So I saw that the vehicle volumes were pretty low on this roadway, and it seems like most of the concepts include a striped center line. And I was wondering if there was any consideration for not striping a center line on this roadway, just to make that space a little bit more vague and to potentially slow vehicle traffic as well. Try not to channelize it a little bit.
Okay, I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. You're asking, could this center line not be striped, and then it would just be, I guess in theory, a 20 feet shared space for motorists?
Yeah. So like on most of our residential streets, we don't stripe center lines. So this would kind of be one of those examples where the center line's not striped.
Yeah, it's a fair question. Yeah, I don't do a lot of striping and signing. I would like to defer to Meseret or Abdullahi if possible around this. Just
Can I ask a quick question, Alexander? What's the ADT again?
1,500.
Oh yeah, okay, that's very low. If it's okay, and then your engineers want to say, I do. That is a volume that would probably be in the range of considering that, in my opinion. I don't know where we'll land, but I do agree that that's pretty low, and it's not required to be striped if it's through the MUTCD, if it's under, I think, 6,000.
Okay. Janet,
I just, Alec,
Real quick, yeah, Meseret, please.
oh yeah, I just want to add is that this is Jim, if you can add as well, is that this is a state aid route, so we will have them to review our design as well. So we will verify with state aid as well.
okay. Janice, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I kind of have two questions. And I see Matthew Hendricks is here now, and he probably maybe he can pipe in. One was I thought it was Matthew who asked on the last time this was presented. We asked the city to explore the option of not including cars. Matthew, is that right? Did you? And so I was wondering if you did, especially with the low, what people are saying are low numbers of cars, whether that was explored. That's my first question. And my second question is, if there are such low amounts of cars, do we really need that wide car lanes? Why are we leaving the car lanes at 12 feet?
Yeah, so I can speak to this at a high level. The question was asked last time, would we consider removing vehicle traffic from this roadway since the ADT is around, 1,500, which is pretty low. I mean, I think there's a few challenges to that. I'm just pulling up a map right now, just to highlight that. Can everyone see my Google Maps up?
Yep.
So, I would say just from a general level, it's a bit out of scope in terms of rerouting vehicle traffic. If we do close this to motorists, then we're forcing detour routing onto Penn and Glenwood. And that does come with additional costs with rerouting that vehicle traffic, with the kind of reprogramming those spaces, rather than just leaving vehicle traffic on this section of the bridge.
And what about why you need the lanes that wide?
So there's state aid standards that give us some rigidity. My understanding is from the state aid standards, there has to be a 12-foot width, and we have flexibility in terms of how we paint that space. And so we had recommended actually having, although this is a 12-foot lane, there would actually be 10 feet of driving space, or an actual 10-foot travel lane.
Janice, did that answer your questions?
Yes.
Okay, I think I saw Alexander. Was there another Alexander with their hand up, or is it Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Marta. Yeah, as far as the striping and the lanes, I mean, I'm just imagining crossing the bridge. You've got a white line, and then 10 feet away from the white line, you've got a yellow line. It feels like those are good cues for slowing, but it's true with that low average daily vehicle travel. It would be sort of interesting to see what the state aid, maybe their state aid guidelines about, yes, you have to put a yellow dashed straight line. So that's sort of one observation. Just the other point about the whole, can this or could this become a purely biped bridge? Again, it was more sort of a theoretical question. The reasoning being you could do, I think for me, again, it just came down to the money part. Could there be significant enough savings to do some really interesting, cool things, keeping this money savings within this district, so people would see the benefit of a much different, higher quality bike pit facility. But it sort of only works if it's like, oh my God, we're spending millions more for 1,500 cars a day. And I guess I would just repeat again that it still, I think, is worth asking the question, are we really spending several more $1 million to put 1,500 cars, and could a couple $1 million spent in this neighborhood do some kind of amazing, interesting, different things? That was really the Matthew, I think that's what sort of, again, it's theoretical because we don't have any numbers, but I think it's still always worth looking at the money part. So that's my comment. Thanks.
Any response, Alexander, or that was just, I guess, a statement. Correct, Phil?
Oh, yeah. I don't, at this point, I mean, I trusting that this is at 10%, there's obviously the sort of the money part is to come. So, well, financing, maybe at this point, Alexander, I forget, is this in, so at a 2023 build, is this in a CIP, or is this?
It is in CIP.
It is in CIP. Okay, got it.
Yeah. I mean, I did chat with Meseret because that question came up last time. I think there's, marginal cost savings in terms of making this a bike ped only bridge. And those cost savings, I would imagine, would likely be lost when we had to improve other roadway facilities to accommodate the change in connectivity through this area. The other also challenges, we're just reconstructing this one bridge. So we're talking about, I think, a much broader vision of eliminating a road to vehicles here, and this project is only really cutting into a piece of that. And so it's a little challenging, just from a project standpoint, for this project to be that catalyst for a larger effort when it's just really not scoped that way at the present time.
Well, yeah, no, I hear you. I would say as the dollar, as the engineering shows up the costs, I think it's not something to forget, but I hear you. So yeah, no, I have no.
I do thank you all for the points, and just one other thing I wanted to bring up, based on the comments I'm hearing, we're presenting 24 effective feet of roadway width for vehicles. The question is, can this be reduced? Does the MSA allow a further reduction in width? And if not a reduction in width, are there more painting improvements we can do to slow speeds? Can we remove the dash center line? Can we think more about where these white lines are at? And just overall, how can we minimize, from a design standpoint, the effective width that motorists have in this area so they travel slower? Is kind of what I'm gathering from the comments.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I see Matthew Hendricks.
Hi, yeah. Thanks, Alexander, for the presentation. And I think the question that I raised the last time we saw this is still on the table as far as what is that delta and what the cost delta and what would a design look like for this bridge. And I hear you saying that in order to accommodate the 1,500 trips on the other routes they might take, Glenwood and Penn and the Van Wyck Memorial Bridge, there'd need to be a lot of reworking of those streets, which are already designed to accommodate significant volumes. So I'd be curious to get a little more detail on what, what's driving the sort of the thinking on the cost if some traffic is diverted, as it will be during construction of this bridge, whatever the design is. This bridge will be out for some period of time. Is the city planning to spend millions of dollars on Penn and Glenwood during the construction phase? So that's kind of one line of questions. And then the other question is, what design are you looking at when you say that a ped bike and emergency vehicle bridge in this location would not cost that much less than a bridge that's clearly, much wider than it would need to be if it were just for, not having motor vehicles. So it would be helpful to see a little more detail on that analysis to better understand the comparison between those two. And then the only other comment I would have is, I think from your statement about scope, it sounds like you're assuming that making this, a ped bike and active use bridge would require a much larger project, but I'm not sure that it would, because some of the road nearby, like some of Cedar Lake Road nearby, would still need to be there for local access. And so it's really about changing the nature of Cedar Lake Road in terms of the amount of through traffic, but not necessarily rebuilding it or increasing the scope of the project in that sense. So I'd say I would still like to see more detail on the analysis of the options.
Yeah,
Alexander, are you able to do that for us?
I am. I guess I'm struggling a little bit because I think the cost savings are really negligible. I think the impetus is it seems like there's a desire to change the nature of what this bridge is fundamentally, right? Because I would imagine the cost savings are like pretty irrelevant between having it a bike ped and a car only. I can have Meseret briefly comment about what the general costs are, and we can provide further analysis on cost savings. But let's just throw cost savings aside. You all are, or not you all, but some of you are advocating for changing just the functional usage of this bridge. And if we do change the functional usage of this bridge, then we have to rethink how do we provide car access. And that's where I start to get worried about scope and what this is, because that was never the scope of this project. So that's kind of what I would like that's kind of where I'm centering on more so is that, like just the functional uses of this bridge that is being recommended to be reconsidered.
Okay, Tyler?
Hey, Alexander. So, are you able to go back to that cross section just for a moment?
Let me pull it up.
I guess my question is about the height of the fencing or the railing on the outsides. Is there a specific reason it's that high? I ask that just because the way it is right now, it really kind of pushes people walking and cycling across the bridge. It pushes their interaction more with cars, and I'm wondering if that barrier could actually be between the cars and the pedestrians and the cyclists, rather than the cyclists and the edge of the bridge. I'm assuming there's some sort of safety consideration there, but can you just talk about that railing and the height of it?
Yeah, and I'll punt to Meseret on this because we were chatting a bit about kind of the heights, and we have a few precedent examples that we can share. But Meseret, do you want to just talk through the kind of the heights, what flexibility we may have with those, with the rail lines, and just a little more context around that?
Yes, thanks, Alexander. I think it's a good point because the railing height came up with the BNSF some kind of guideline and requirements that they put on us. One of them is about 10. It has to be about 10 feet high. So which is including the concrete railing, which is about 2, 4, and the difference will be ornamental railing type above the concrete railing. So that is how right now we're showing it to be about 10 foot high total, is based on the BNSF requirement or guidelines. But we've done different ones, but they still would like us to have really narrow in between, especially when we're crossing a rail track. So that is how we came on this railing height. So that's based on the BNSF.
And what is that height again, Meseret? Just to repeat.
The total is 10 foot high.
And there's a few examples I just want to share with the group of other examples. So this is over St. Anthony Parkway in Northeast Minneapolis. So this is a design that's potential that we could consider. Obviously their bike ped treatment's a little bit different, but this is a railing example. This is on Cedar Lake Road. That's actually really close, or on the Grand Rounds, really close by. Obviously the sidewalk treatment will be different, but just to give folks a few illustrative examples of other treatments we've done over active rail lines that we're exploring as well.
Okay, thank you. Candace.
Hi, Alex. I have a couple questions. I do feel like I fall in the group that would rather see this as a bike ped only connection. And so I guess to add additional maybe framing around that. So when this bridge is reconstructed, what is the anticipated life expectancy of it, and like when would potentially the next time this be redesigned? Like if we rebuild the bridge now, that it could change after it's built, right? Like space could always be reallocated, but like I guess I just want to understand, like, are we locking ourselves into basically auto-oriented bridge for the next 60 years, or you know, is that something that could change sooner than later?
Meseret, how long do these bridges typically last for?
Well, typically bridges are designed between 50 to sometimes goes to 75 years. So the 60 average is correct, I would say. So Jim, is that the life expectancy with designing this bridge? Jim is our designer too, so.
Yes, Meseret, we'll be designing this bridge for a 60 to 75 year life expectancy.
And remind me about the other portion. They're basically two bridges, do I recall correctly? And what's the expected life remaining on the other piece, and does that have a scheduled replacement?
Yeah, I'll defer to Meseret, but this is the secondary bridge here.
That is not going to be expected to be replaced anytime soon, but there might be some repair work that will be done, which is not going to be extensively high. But we don't have the scheduled timeline, but that's not going to be in the next, I don't say in the next 10 years.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Alexander, I have one follow-up point on that. This is Jim Belfi from TKDA. Could you go back to your kind of the typical section of the bridge deck? That 2-foot raised median, the proposed, thank you. That 2-foot raised median is going to be a secondary pour across the bridge deck. So if in the future that would want or need to be removed, it could be taken off and the surface patched, or the full bridge deck, then the full width, could have a mill and overlay placed on it.
Okay. All right, I see Dan Miller.
Yes, hi. Couple questions. You said that there's some variety here and some massaging of this railing to make it look more friendly, and I appreciate that. What I'm coming up with on Google is that there is no lighting between Morgan Avenue and Chestnut. So there's, I think, no lighting between those two bridges, that whole length. And since this is something that's new, maybe it's worthwhile to make this more pedestrian friendly at night, to think about some lighting accents here. The other thought, along with the 2-foot, I know the median is narrow and everything, but is there something that can be done to, again, make this a little less utilitarian? Is there, for lack of a better thing, a planter or something that kind of makes this a little more of a landmark bridge rather than utility? Thanks.
No, those are great questions, Dan. Jim and Meseret, are we proposing including lighting on the stretch of the bridge?
I think we did. Originally, we have thought about having to have lights. We haven't determined the locations of the lights, but yes, we do have a plan to have lights on those. But on the planter type, it's really good, but we usually really very challenging to have any kind of planting on bridge, because any water going through the bridge or any kind of that will just be challenging on bridge.
Perhaps it's some kind of upright structure rather than having the sign or the bollard treatment there. Is there something that's softer that could be elevated, at least partially, that makes it a little bit more of a landmark. And likewise, the lighting in there right now is basically task lighting that is hitting the intersections on Morgan and the other street. And if there could be something of a decorative element, like the bridge that was shown nearby, the Parkway Bridge, I think that would be helpful.
You know, I was just thinking simply colored concrete for the median. I mean, because it's true, I did see this sort of mass, and it's like, oh, how about a little more visual? So maybe at the very least, some color in the concrete, or stamping, color stamping, something elevated, something like that.
I was actually even thinking about the railing looking better. Isn't there a way to soften what the railing looks like? Make it more artistic, maybe? Would that help make it softer?
I mean, we have a new kind of Minneapolis standard railing that we put in on 38th and 35W and the bike ped bridge, I think off of 24. That is, you know, artistic is, I don't know if it fully qualifies artistic, but I'd say it's more artistic than the typical railing screening treatments that we see. And we would, you know, probably be able to put that in. It's like this basically, but black. But this one was designed in green. I forget the history behind it, but this is a kind of unique treatment. But this is kind of a nice weave to it.
Yeah, I kind of like that better. Let's see. Matthew Hendricks.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just hearing some of the conversation. I was going to suggest, and I can't remember if we went into this level of detail in our prior motion, but was going to suggest that the city explore a temporary pilot using, you know, J barriers or easy to change materials to try closing the bridge to motorized traffic for a short period of time, and then get feedback from immediate neighbors, because most of us on this call or in this meeting don't live in the immediate area, and so we're, you know, it's somewhat hypothetical to predict what the neighborhood would value as far as the bridge. And because it is a significant expense, it seems like the step of that kind of engagement around what the bridge could be is a reasonable thing to do, especially given however the bridge is designed, that's kind of the design for the next 60 plus years. So I would move as a BAC recommendation that the city temporarily close the bridge to motor vehicle traffic to, you know, as a pilot to get local feedback on the design of the bridge.
Count on you to make that proposal or write that proposal if everybody agrees with it.
Sure, I could type something up and email it to you.
This is Janice. Matthew, maybe in our motion last time, did we ask for an option, that to be one of the options when they present ideas to the residents, that they at least suggest an option that did not include cars as a way to find out what they think? Did we? That somehow sounds familiar to me, like we might have done that already.
Yeah, I know we discussed it, and I just don't remember what we put into our resolution, so I don't remember the specific language.
So just so folks are aware, we have an open house on October 26th. The proposal that you just mentioned, Matthew, is quite out of scope for how we're approaching that open house. If we do move forward with that, I think we would likely reschedule to accommodate that change in direction. And so it's not just as simple as, you know, let's try this out. Not trying to contradict you, but just letting you know that we would need to really rethink how we're approaching this project and engagement and scoping. And I just wanted this group to be aware of the things that we have in place, since they've already kind of started in motion, and this recommendation is changing that course of direction, I would say pretty significantly.
Thank you.
I don't even know how that even plays out, to be honest with you, like this idea that's been proposed.
I appreciate that, you know, giving us a heads up about that open house on the 26th and how that might change. I see Tyler, your hand is up.
Yeah, I think Mesrit had mentioned that this was a state aid route. If it is, it is a state rate route, I guess. Is there any stipulations that says you can't take cars off this because it is? I'm just wondering, how that designation might affect what we're even thinking about or proposing here.
Yeah, I think it does, because if you have to take out from the system, there is a process and procedure to actually to get it back to either it could be somewhere else and so forth. Yeah, I don't know the specifics, but there is a process for that, but it's not a simple process. So to take out of off system of the state aid.
And then my second question, real quick, is, say cars were not going to be on the bridge anymore, would you actually need to replace it at that time? Is there a requirement to replace the bridge because of cars? Or if there's no cars on it, do you even need to replace it?
Okay, I totally missed that question. Would you mind, or was that a question or statement? I totally missed it.
That was more of a question, but I guess it's sort of hypothetical. So if we were going to not allow cars on the bridge anymore, would we actually need to replace that bridge? Going forward, if we do keep cars on that bridge, is the reasoning to replace the bridge because we're going to keep cars on it? So basically, if there's no cars on it, do we actually need to replace the bridge? That's my question. Hopefully it's not too much of a mind bender.
I think one thing that I can say is any structure that's sitting even without a use has to be inspected and kept safe. So even if it has to be somehow be repaired or you got to do something just to keep it safe. So there is still be some cost to it. We just don't close it and leave it, but still be inspected and make sure that it's safe. So.
I'm loving the questions. They're right on point, I think. I don't see anybody else's. Oh, Bill, see your hand.
Sure. Well, it sounds like what Matthew's motion was suggesting is that, yeah, and at this point, clearly need to move ahead. It feels like with this October open house, but it sounds like the motion is that would come before the full BAC would be, does the BAC feel like a closing as a pilot to sort of demonstrably sort of gauge neighborhood feelings about could this work without cars? It's something worth, yeah, I think it's something worth discussing because who knows, maybe people would say, oh, what an idea, close it, never thought about it. Wouldn't that be nice? Or, oh, you must be kidding me. It's like, we live here, we want this, this is gonna be a nice bridge. We like the work that's been done so far at 10%, and we want it to go. I mean, a closure would certainly, and then a community meeting would certainly gauge, get some real-time feedback. So that's my comment.
Dan Miller? Dan?
Hello. Yeah, I know this is somewhat of a step different than what is proposed at 10% here, but it's maybe a good time, Alexander and Meseret, to think about this a little bit and think about the Neighborhood Greenway program, which in effect, this, while it's being short, it's really reconnecting Bassett Creek to the other park there, Burn Moth, and if one would approach it that way to be able to make this a green thing, that might be a really nice trade-off that the community would it'd be a little more palatable to them than rather than just a street closure for bicycles. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dan, his hand is on. So what I'm getting from this, and I'll need help, is that we are going to maybe recommend to the full BAC that, as Phil was saying, as a pilot, kind of pilot it first with no cars to see what the neighborhood thinks about it. And Matthew is going to do the write-up. Is that right?
Yes, I could write up a draft resolution for the full BAC to consider.
Okay, and then just, you send it to everybody, right? So everybody has a chance to look at it?
I think I send it to you and to a couple of the admin folks or folks kind of in leadership, and then it gets sent out with, and Dan, and gets sent out with the other resolutions from this meeting as a package.
All right, cool, thank you.
Yes,
Well,
yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say too, I hear in Alexander's comments that there is some process underway and that some of what we're asking for maybe doesn't, mesh neatly with that process. And so I want to acknowledge that and say, I'm not deaf to that, I hear it. But I also think there are some really valuable precedents in Minneapolis where the city has been very visionary about how to use space that used to be for cars. So Scimitar Crossing is one example where there was a robust community process and it came out as a pedestrian and bike space. And that really was driven by the local residents and what they wanted to see. And another example, this is going back a little further, but when light rail was built for the Green Line, a lot of traffic was removed. All general traffic was removed from the Washington Avenue Bridge at the U of M campus. And that was an order of magnitude more traffic than this bridge has. So there are other situations where the city has prioritized something else and taken traffic off of a bridge, and it's, I think, generally worked out positively. So I just want to be clear, I don't mean to be coming out of left field, and I do acknowledge there's some process already underway. So it's just such a long-term investment that I think it's worth exploring the options.
Thank you for that statement, and thank you for the presentation. I think it was very well done. The questions were excellent. And so when will we see you again?
Yeah, I don't really know. It depends on how this pilot goes. According to the schedule that I'm following, I would be coming back to in the summer of 2022 with the 30% concept. So I'm going to connect with you finding steps.
You're breaking up a little bit. I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that.
So according to the schedule I have laid out, I'll be coming to you all back in summer of 2022 with the 30% concept. I need to chat offline about this pilot idea and gain some sense of what that really means, because it's quite a transition from what I was, moving forward with. So I'll follow back up with you all once I figure that out, to be honest.
Well, thank you, and thank you for even, considering and being willing to work on it and kind of change it. I think it's important that the neighborhood has some stake in it, kind of feel they will embrace it better if they get a little bit better chance to maybe even see what it looks like before, it becomes the way you want it. Anyway, thank you for the presentation. That was excellent. And if there's no one else that needs to speak, we're going to move on to our next one. Anybody? Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. All right. The next one, Tyler Peterson. We're going to be talking about the Minneapolis Park Board's got a let me just go back and check this out. Pilot for trails.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a quick question. Tyler.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
Who did the lines over on Victory?
They went viral, didn't they? Yeah, it was amazing.
I happened to live over there, and I was like, okay, it was kind of funny. I don't know if people understand what happened, but the lines looked like somebody, I don't know, drinking or something. They were just wiggly lines. So
yeah, that was me and Chris on a Friday night. No.
No, I'm just messing with you. All right, go ahead. Sorry about that. Go with your presentation.
No, that's okay. Yeah, that's one of those things that is just unfortunate, and Chris might be able to talk a little bit more about it. But yeah, it was. My sister sent me the tweet notification, and I was like, oh my gosh, of course. The most perfectly straight trail there ever was is Victor Memorial Drive, and of course the white line is all wiggly. But to talk about some more fun stuff, things that we have not done very well at the park system is maintaining our trails that we put in. And I've got Chris DeRoche. He's in our asset management division. department, and he's done some really, really great work over the last year or so on inventorying trails and cataloging them and providing information and condition on the trails. And I'm just going to throw it over to him, and he'll talk a little bit about that work and some of the work that you all will be seeing in the near future.
Awesome. Thank you, Tyler. And thank you, everybody, for having me. As Tyler said, my name is Chris DeRoche. Official title with the Park Board is Project and Systems Manager. So I am new to the Park Board, as in officially as an employee 2 months ago. I've been working in a consultant capacity for, as Tyler mentioned, a little bit longer on some of this stuff, but now officially at the Park Board over the last about 2 months. So I am going to share my screen quickly, and I'm excited to talk trail striping with everybody. Maybe we'll wait till the end and we can answer some questions about that. So this is a kind of an adapted presentation or an updated presentation based on one we gave. I gave to the board. Kind of one of the things, and it's a part of a broader program that we're looking at the Park Board, and specifically in asset management around life cycle management. As Tyler mentioned, one of the things that that we haven't done great at the Park Board over years is really managing assets in terms of their lifespan. What are kind of these incremental things that needs to happen to assets, normally at a regular interval, to keep them keep their condition up, make them last longer, and keep the experience of using them still a positive experience. So one of those assets that's actually very particular to those things is trails, and specifically our regional trails. So that's what I'm going to talk about here today. Mostly is about the regional trail program, but understand that this fits kind of in our broader lifecycle management program that I'm going to talk a little bit about as well. So we're going to get a little bit of theory on the front end, and then talking more about the program, and then showing some stuff that we've done this year so far. So what I always start with this sign or this this slide with this presentation, because I think it's really, really important that we are maintaining our facilities, maintaining our assets to achieve really the Park Board's mission of, as you can read there. So due to the depreciation of these assets and facilities over time, we really aren't living up to that, right? The level of safety and service and safety, cannot be achieved via asset without intervention, without actually doing something to it. So how do you make that happen? It's really the development of a life cycle program. So a strategic plan for how an asset has been maintained during its lifespan. The Park Board does a really good job at capital projects, building things, right? Building new trails, building new courts, building new playgrounds, or really replacing them. But where we've fallen down a little bit in the past, at least from my perspective, has been in kind of those intermediate maintenance steps that happen. What are the things that needs to happen in between from when you put it in until the end of its life? So you're seeing some kind of pictures down here. I think you can see my cursor, but of some of kind of our trails or our court systems that we're also working on now. So what we're trying to do with a life cycle program is really accomplish a more deliberate and equitable treatment of assets. Say we have them all inventoried, we know their condition, and this is how we're attacking them, that it's a standard level of service across the system. You don't go from a trail, say like Minnehaha, that's maybe in very, very rough shape, to a brand new trail, to maybe a trail that's in rough shape, kind of leveling out that level of service across the system, coming up with a more predictable yearly expense. So understanding what it actually costs to maintain and keep these assets in place, extending the lifespan by doing some of these interventions. And then it's really a transparent plan. One of the things that I've really heard from both staff and commissioners and other management at the Park Board is there hasn't been as much of an answer on, hey, when is this, how are we going to improve this trail? We know maybe when roughly it might be replaced, but we really don't know kind of now with this kind of life cycle program, we're able to share, yep, it's coming up for this intervention in, say, 2 years or 3 years or 5 years or 7 years, and this is the plan for that. So how did we come about developing this? I'm probably going to jump through this quickly, but I am more than willing to go back and actually kind of share a lot of the details of this. As Tyler mentioned kind of in the introduction, one thing that I felt was really, really important to do was to collect a very detailed inventory. So what you're seeing in the first picture is actually how we decided to go about doing this, using a GoPro and some meshing with GIS. And I went around and took a picture of every single regional trail every 5 seconds. This actually allowed us to collect images of the trail so we know what's there, see cracks, see different conditions of the trails, so that we are actually able to figure out, what are the interventions that need to happen to those trails, where are they better or worse shape. What you're seeing in the second image on the top is actually every single image, right, that was taken along these trails. What we did then was understanding that trails vary in their condition, pretty frequently. So we segmentized all of the regional trail system, the Grand Rounds regional trail system, and that's what you're seeing here. We did those segmentations based on both conditions and then kind of some natural breaks. So say a new trail went in, the condition obviously would change between the new trail and then the old trail. That created a break, but also things like streets or other intersecting trails. And then we went through a kind of a detailed scoring system to kind of give each one of those trail segments a condition. And that's what you're seeing as this last step. So what we got out of all of that was a life cycle model. Every single segment of every single regional trail, we've done the majority, or we've done all of the bike trail segments and then the majority of the pedestrian trail segments with how long they are, how many square feet they are, and then what their condition is. And then what we're able to do with that then is start saying, okay, here are the interventions and here's how it slides into the life cycle model. Here's where we know stuff needs to be, when things need to be replaced. Here's where maybe when they need to get seal coats or crack seals or different interventions. And then from that are actually able to budget to say, okay, we actually know how much money now we need to maintain our trails to this specific level of service that we want to provide. So what went into the kind of the trail program inputs? What decided what life cycle interventions we were going to do and how frequent they were going to be? I'm not going to go through each one of these, but you'll see it was a lot of things. Everything from current best practices in terms of trails to a lot of our guiding documents around the comp plan, racial equity action plan, and then also bringing in some of our 2020 equity matrix, which our planning department uses. So this process and all of these inputs came up to a what I'm going to really call a draft or a pilot life cycle program. So looking at trails in terms of their life cycle, we set based on all of those things, a 30-year lifespan. So that's from a new trail goes in tomorrow, we would expect that trail would be replaced in 30 years. What are the interventions that would need to happen within those 30 years and their frequency? So the park board has not really done any crack sealing or seal coating on any of the trails, at least within the last, maybe I can't speak for, maybe Tyler would have better answers, but maybe in the last 10 years, 15 years, I know there was some stuff that had happened in the past. And so coming up with some of those best practices to actually do that crack sealing and that seal coating. And then also, one of the things that we do is kind of patch and repair trail segments as they come up, but this would actually put those interventions on a life cycle, on a schedule, knowing that we need to be looking at these, going out and actively patching, repairing, fixing segments about every 10 years, and then a replacement every 30 years. So one of the interesting things, and this kind of got to a different point in the presentation, but the system status, we have about 60% of our trails score 3 out of 5. Only 1% score a 1 out of 5. So 1 out of 5 being the worst. So we have a lot of trails that are good, okay, not great. They're really at this tipping point in their lifespan where if we're able to get to them, if we're able to do some patching, able to do some seal coating, able to extend their life, we can really extend the life and extend the quality, or really increase the quality of experience on these trails. But we're at a really key tipping point in the life of a lot of these trails. So what does kind of our current inventory look like right now? we have about, this is speaking just to the grand rounds, just to be kind of like clear about this. Our regional trails, the grand rounds around Minneapolis, and both the bike and pedestrian trails. So there are about 97 miles of these trails. You can see the square footage in the lineal feet with a life cycle of about 30 years. So what you're seeing here is how that program that I just laid out, that 7-8 year for seal coat and crack sealing, that 10-year for patch and replace, and that 30-year for full depth replacement works out into a total cost. So these are costs per year. So our seal coating and crack seal program should be about $500,000 per year. A patch and repair program should be about $200,000 a year. And then we should be spending about $800,000, $900,000 on replacing trails every year. So how does that look compared to what we're doing now? What you're seeing on the left, kind of highlighted in blue, is our model program, that $1.6 million in total costs. What are we doing for our current budget? We're doing, or what does our current budget actually allow? We have set aside about $500,000 for regional trails, understanding that some of that goes to bike ped trails, some of that goes different places right now, and there's also additional capital dollars that are spent on regional trails, and I'll talk about that in a second. But under our current budgeting, what we'd be able to do would be about a 12-year seal coat crack seal program, and then using kind of one-time funding emergency repair to do that patch and repair in the full depth replacements. As I mentioned, and as Tyler's here, as Tyler has worked on some of these projects, what this doesn't account for are dollars that would be spent as a part of our capital program. I think that's important to note because there are a lot of dollars that are spent there. One of the things that I think maybe I'll just say I am advocating for is that we really build that capital program into the life cycle program, and so that we're actually able to kind of pull those two pieces together. So we know we're spending more than $500,000 a year on trails, but as a part of our current life cycle program, that's about what we're spending right now. So how does that compare of our modeled budget? Ideally, what we would like to do as a park board on our regional trails versus what we currently have, we're about $1 million short, $1.1 million short. So we looked at all of that and said, we know we got to start somewhere. We know we have to. We know that we have a lot of this infrastructure out there that needs to be repaired, some of it needs to be replaced, and there are a lot of interventions that could happen. Where do we start? So what we decided to do this year, based on a lot of different factors that I can go into, is to do both the majority of the program, to do a seal coat and striping program, and then to do some of these other smaller pilot projects around repairs. So what you're seeing on the map on the right is a map of all the locations that we worked. It's about a little under 8 miles of trails. The majority of this is what I call the Columbia Golf Course segment. It's a segment up in Northeast that runs next to Columbia Golf Course, Victory Memorial Trail, the west side of Cedar, the west side of Lake of the Isles, the west side of Benay-Makaska, and then the east side of Nokomis. These segments were chosen for this seal coat program based on their current condition, in that they were fairly good candidates for a seal coat, which means they are a 3/4. They're in fairly good shape. There's not any major issues with them. That doesn't mean that the experience is great in riding them. It probably means there are some cracks, but that the surface itself is fairly held together. We did get a bid on that project. The bid award, we were a little bit under $400,000, and the work has been completed from September 20th till still right now. So a key thing to know about this is about 93% of what we needed to do to kind of fulfill that life cycle schedule, but we are not doing any full depth replacement of trails this year. So here are kind of some quick pictures of what we did. I can talk a little bit more technical side or send over specifications on the seal coating that we did do. We went with a seal coat specification that is kind of a two-step process. It is what we'd call a squeegeed on layer. The first layer, which is a seal coat. Some people call it a slurry seal. Some people call it a micro surface, but it's a little bit thicker of a seal coat to fill in some of those gaps, possibly fill in some of the either very small cracks that are in the surface, but it has a little bit of aggregate to it. That was, and then the second step in that process is a spray on coat. So here's some images. I tried to take a good picture to show that there is kind of some depth to that seal coat, and this is the process of it going on right now. And then two of the other things that we did this year were kind of try out some different interventions. We know that there are a lot of trails that are in actually fairly decent shape, but have some of these dangerous conditions, especially along longitudinal cracks that run longitudinal to the trail itself, right? That could grab a bike tire and maybe are a little bit thicker of a crack. So what we did was test out kind of two separate interventions that could possibly fix or at least be patches to those sorts of conditions. One is a mastic. This is what you're seeing here. This is also what was used recently on the Midtown Greenway project at a couple of places. So I think there's be some good learnings from that. This is what it looks like when it goes on before the seal coat and then after the seal coat. It's not beautiful. It's not, but it definitely, what these looked like before were some maybe even up to an inch wide cracks here on the the east side of Nokomis that were some fairly dangerous conditions. There's been a lot of questions as we've done this project, and I'll go into this a little bit more as to why we aren't fixing these cracks in some other spaces with the seal coat. And I think the intention going forward is going to be to do that. But in this pilot year, we're trying to really figure out what are the best interventions for specific, kind of trail failures, and then where would we use them? And then in future years going forward, implement those improvements or implement those things like mastic and some other interventions, and then doing the seal coating later. So what you're seeing here is a second process we tried. This is called infrared patching. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but essentially heating up asphalt, putting down new oils on the asphalt, maybe some new, actually asphalt itself, mixing it in, and then leveling it all back out. What you're seeing on the right, this picture is actually, it looks like there was some sort of pipe that ran underneath this trail, which caused it to sink. This was, I'm not sure if people are familiar, this is not Long Minnehaha. This was maybe a 1 to 2 inch lip that really was a jarring spot. So we tested out this along Minnehaha between Cedar and 14th Avenue, and to really good success, in my opinion. It's not pretty, as you can see, but what you get is it's very cost effective. We don't have to haul or cut any material because it's a seamless patch. So it's a waterproof patch, and you get a really smooth riding experience because it's rolled out after the fact. So instead of like cutting out and adding in new material, it's actually a really interesting way of doing this. We're interested to see how this holds up and how it lasts, but at least in the first years, these patches seem to have worked really, really well. So I wanted to, in my last kind of 2 slides, want to talk a little bit about kind of our process and make sure that folks do understand that what we're doing here is really intended to be a pilot, to be a first shot at this. And I think I'm glad that I'm here to talk to all of you to get some feedback on your experience on the trails and what you would like to see so we can continue to develop this program. As was mentioned with some line striping issues that are new to striping new lines on newly seal coated trails, we're learning as we go along. As I mentioned before, this isn't something that the Park Board's done in the past, so we're trying to continue to work on this cycle of refining it based on our practical experience. That could be both in terms of the interventions that we do, but also the timing. If we find that seal coating is really extending the life of the trails, and we don't need to be seal coating every 7 or 8 years, as we get 7 or 8 years from now, we can update that and change it and start refining it. So what have we kind of learned this year? There's been some key things around closure notifications and detours and shared paths. We're doing these as quickly as we can, usually in about 2 days, but we've learned a lot about what works and what doesn't work well. Understanding that there are site coordination and access issues, that's been a big learning as well too. I think the biggest learning for me has been around seal coat expectations and project framing. We've been talking about trail I would say rehab or trail renovation or trail repair, where these, which is really not what these seal coating projects are doing. Seal coating is really a maintenance intervention. It doesn't slightly improve the ride experience because of the seal coat we're using, but it's really more of a long-term life extending intervention than it is a condition intervention. And from that, kind of really the desire for some more experiential repairs. So fixing those cracks, fixing those bumps, fixing some of those failing sections. I added this today. This weekend, as some of you know and saw some of those pictures, we're learning that doing new line striping on some of our trails, especially Victory Memorial, is a challenge. We've been chasing lines because they've been out there forever, which is actually a little bit easier. But laying down new lines on especially really, really long linear trails with the type of equipment that we have to use, which is a very small buggy, is actually pretty challenging. And so we're out there testing some different ways of doing that today, because our current method and what our trades painter staff use right now actually doesn't work when we don't really have a good line to chase. And so learning that today, and what you saw from last week was I'll call it a good lesson. And as I was joking with somebody this weekend, I'm going to start my next presentation with that picture, and it's just going to be a presentation about resilience and learning and and doing better next time. So what we're doing for next year, the hope is to continue a seal coating program, but actually start doing some of these, launching really this patch and repair program, figuring out where some of the worst segments are, and getting out there and doing those infrared patches, doing those remove and replaces, and doing some of that mastic. I'm in the process right now of kind of defining where those spaces would be and where we would be doing our seal coating, but very much open to input, and we would like to hear what, from this group on what they would like to see in the future. So with that, I will end, and also willing to share some of the more kind of like technical things that I mentioned, whether that is the model itself, kind of our schedule and model, or some of that background GIS information with images and pictures and conditions. So I will stop there.
Well, thank you. I see a hand, Janice.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments. First of all, I was a little surprised when the signs went up about paving. I'm thinking, you're paving a bike trail, and then on the BAC, and I didn't even know this was going to be done. Tyler knows about my reaction. So I'd say that as you move forward, please use us, consult us. You did this study of all the trails. We use the trails all the time, and we would love to provide input on where we would like to see changes. And in particular, what I can say is the part of Lake of the Isles, which was repaved, the longitudinal cracks are still there. The resealing just provided an extra layer on top of the cracks. There was a square, essentially like a pothole in the path there. It's still there. It's still 1 inch deep. So I'd say with limited funds, instead of doing that little cosmetic thing that you did I would have loved to have seen you repair the section that is unsafe. So, I understand that you want to do some sealing, see how long that lasts, but please, consult with us to ask about what we would like to see as well. And I'd also say, I don't know if it's just because the seal coating isn't supposed to do anything except just cover it, or whether the contractor you had didn't do a good job. But it seems like all the longitudinal cracks are still there. Water's going to still go in, and in the winter freeze and make the crack bigger. So I don't quite understand what the seal coating was supposed to do on Lake of the Isles.
Yeah, I maybe can quickly just answer like the purpose of seal coating. And no, you're 100% correct. The seal coating will not fix, especially I know the exact kind of cracks and also that square that you're talking about. The seal coating will not repair those sections. What seal coating is really intended to do is to prevent future degradation in the trails, especially around to stop some of those bigger cracks from happening in the future, but it won't it doesn't bring the trail back in time to fix some of those cracks. That needs to be a different intervention, and that is, as you are identifying, 100% something that we need to do as well too. And as I mentioned in our lessons and learnings, like how we frame this is, I'll totally take credit for that. We were excited about this, right? Trail, you know, we're doing trail maintenance, we're doing a big trail program for the first time, and I think framing this more as a maintenance, seal coating as a maintenance and life extending project than it is a condition repairing project.
But then I guess the question is that the best use of funds where there's parts of the trails that really need to be repaired?
100% fair, 100% fair question, and I think it's, from my perspective, it is. I think it is both, but I think we've heard from this year, and I think I'm hearing obviously now that there is a really big desire to fix some of those, especially safety issues, and spending that money towards that right now to get those taken care of.
I see Phil has a hand up. Phil.
Yeah, you know, Chris, Tyler, thanks for coming. Fantastic. I mean, the effort is so important. And I'm thinking that, you know, a snappy headline like, you know, asphalt always cracks, or an ounce of prevention. Something. I mean, you've got the right vibe here. I mean, asset management is, I mean, it's what we ultimately, most people sort of would say off the top of their head is important. It's like, I want a smooth ride. This is crucial. So I think that's really fantastic. It did make me think about 20 years in the oil industry. The phrase "rust never sleeps." Rust never sleeps. Sort of made its debut, and it was very powerful in sort of convincing the oil industry to prioritize maintenance and yearly maintenance of oil pipelines. So that's one thought. I remember about maybe 25 years ago in Wisconsin, and it was perhaps just for walking trails. I remember there was experimentation with a pine tar binder. It was I mean, that's about all I remember. And obviously a non-asphalt, it might have still been VOCs, but it was not a petroleum VOC. I'm just curious whether, you know, perhaps that ended up not being a very good a binder for durability. But I'm just curious if that was looked into.
I can say that as a part of this project, what we really modeled our seal coating projects or seal coating interventions on was the interventions that Three Rivers uses. And so on all of their trail system, they have a really robust seal coating, crack sealing program. And so in this first year, we kind of modeled that after speaking with them and after speaking with some experts. But so that's my long answer. My short answer is no. That's not something we looked into, but I think there's definitely opportunities going forward to look at some different materials or different processes to improve.
Yeah, it could be that you simply have to have a totally different aggregate. It might be a totally different trail. And as I say, I remember reading about it. It was, I believe it was the DNR in Wisconsin tried it out. Yeah. So.
Thanks for that, Phil. Dan Miller.
Yes, Chris, thank you. I'm very humbled by what you presented here. This is a lot of information that I'd love to even see more detail if it can be shared. But it really was great to be able to review ahead of time. And I did all the trails except Nokomis just to check it out last week. I made sure that I wasn't going past a detour, but I caught a lot of it. I do have a couple of questions, and maybe to start out with, you know, the seal coat, right? It doesn't. It's not like a new trail as far as conditions, but hopefully it is preventing it from getting worse, and that's an important deal to do while you still have fairly, you know, an adequate trail to go on. But what was really incredible is that you striped these trails, and I really thank you for doing that to encourage people to understand that, you know, where to be on the trail and that there is a bike trail there, and that was a really important thing to do. But that said, you know, one of the things that I always get confused is when they start putting up those solid yellow and solid white lines, and where the hell am I supposed to be? Because I just get confused. I get confused every time I go down Theodore Wirth Parkway up by 26th and down by 55 there. And I can't, you know, I think other people do too. And so that's something I wish that maybe just putting some thought about these solid, you know, who knows where they're supposed to be if you don't have symbols of, you know, a pedestrian, a bicycle or whatever. I just get confused. And another piece that's exemplified on Cedar Lake Road there, no, not Cedar Lake, by Cedar Lake, was where the width of these things goes down. You're trying to maintain a pedestrian and a double, but all of a sudden you've got 2 foot and 3 foot bike, which is no good for anybody. You're winding up setting up people for conflict. And as one of our members once said, you know, cars get to have 2 people in the front seat to have a conversation. And if you can't feel comfortable walking side by side down a trail or riding down a trail, are we doing something wrong? And I think sometimes if we point out that it's a shared use path, like what was done down on the new Minnehaha Trail up to the bridge, land bridge, where you have, it's obvious that it's a shared use path. It's better than trying to split these things up to say, this is my pedestrian route and this is my thing. I know that's a hot potato issue, but I just thought I'd point it out. And I appreciate that you went with yellow and white rather than that goofy green. But a couple of things that I did notice on Victory Memorial Drive, that you did the sidewalk crossings on the west side of the parkway. And it wasn't done on the east side. I don't know if that just was part of the plan. But one thing that is throughout this whole area from 394 all the way through northeast Minneapolis is the very limited amount of zebra crossings and pedestrian signing that exists in the northeast and north thing compared to the south of 394 regional trail system. And it's the Parkway paving program doesn't do it. They don't think about it. I just went through this on 26th Avenue trying to get a pedestrian crossing on where 26 crosses over to Sunset Hill. And, you know, I mean, it was just impossible. They didn't have an answer for it. And it's just a way of being able to allow people from North Minneapolis to access across this thing to make cars know that there's pedestrians there. I couldn't believe this going across the south side. I started studying this stuff on a bicycle because that's the way I travel the Grand Rounds. But when you travel it by car, you really see all these pedestrian signs come up in these zebra crossings. And it's really something that it just gets slipped. Nobody's looking at it and it slips through different programs. And it would really be something to really look at crossing intersections, being able to get across on these new sidewalks repaved sidewalks that you just did, to just enhance, and the word is encouragement, to encourage people to use these things. So let's see, I think I covered everything. I just really appreciate what you've done here, and you're really giving the city a run for their money. It's time for us to do this in the city too. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, Dan, totally. Janice.
Yeah, I was just going to say, in my enthusiasm to explain my criticism, I didn't say what a great idea I think this program is. So I did want to thank you and apologize for not starting with the compliment.
Oh, we know.
I really do think it's great. And I guess I would echo what Dan was saying about bike and pedestrian symbols. I think that was our comment about downtown as well. I agree. Sometimes I see a stripe and I go, yes, I know I'm supposed to be in a lane, but which one? So.
Yeah,
But I guess there's probably a limited frequency. You can't have it every foot, but anyway, thanks.
This whole notion of maintaining something after it's built, especially with trails, is kind of new to us. I mean, the idea is not new, but the practice is, and so it's going to take a little bit of patience on our part to kind of work through the kinks to make it all happen. We know that the park board, I mean, any given crossing of a parkway or of an adjacent street, there could be any number of stripings or no stripings to actually get across, continental or zebra or whatever. there's a weird orange ladder one at Theodorworth Golf Course that's just very strange. So there's a number of little kinks that we need to work out and develop standards for striping and painting. But generally, on those combined trails where there's 3 lanes, the 2 nearest the parkway are the bicycle lanes, and the one that's furthest away from the parkway or between the nearest the asset, like a lake or whatever, is almost always a pedestrian. And it is on us to actually make that known out there. And we don't always paint every year. There's I don't know how many people are in our paint shop, but I bet we could count it on one hand. And they're out. They paint walls and ceilings inside our rec centers. They paint striping on curbs and outside. So their job isn't just out painting pavement. They've got a number of different jobs that they do. So it is going to take a little bit of time for us to kind of gear up and get going. But Chris and his group over there, I think has done an amazing job. Something that I had been talking about with my bosses for a long time. Just inventorying was my thing, is trying to get an inventory, and very happy that Chris was able to do that, so I didn't have to do it.
Dan, you had a question?
Just a real quick one what's the life cycle, or what's the paint you put down for the striping, and how long will it last? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, that's really basic. Yeah, on experience. What we see and what I've heard from our paint shop is that they ideally would like to stripe our trails every year. That would be our paint foreman's goal. Do they do that? No. What we see in terms of the breakdown of them, one of the big things is to keep our bike trails really clean. We sweep a lot of them, and the sweeper, even more than the plow, really takes the paint off. So I would say what Mose has told me is that between 2 and 3 years, you will get about 80%, even sometimes more than that, of the striping, fading out or getting worn off. So, yeah. So I guess long story short, 3 years, it's probably gone. We'd like to, but within a year, it even starts fading.
I'm wondering if, and maybe you've done this already, but what Three Rivers is doing, and if there's something that's maybe more effective than maybe a latex paint. And it's just a question that if you haven't answered it, Mike, or asked it, it may be worth doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jesse?
Yeah, I had a quick question about so it's great to see a kind of more of a data-driven process to identifying these needed sections that needed repair, replacement, and seal coat. One thing I was wondering is what kind of room is there still for special projects or things to take advantage of, like say, so I work for MnDOT here. So say, MnDOT has a project on 55 and you want to be able to have room in your budget in a certain year out to be able to, take advantage of work being done out there. Is there still kind of like room left outside of this, not strict, but, guided process where we'd be able to do kind of work outside what the template's telling you to be able to maybe hit something 5 years earlier than what it really needed or something?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And in my one other presentation where we talk about courts, which is another one that we're doing in life cycle, I reference on one of the later slides that this is really intended to be a base, in that we can do more and different things off of. So I would even argue that having this kind of foundation, data-driven foundation, allows us to say, oh, we need to do something else, or oh, there's an opportunity to do something here and partner on a project. It actually even gives us more flexibility to do that, because we know, oh, yep, this is how much we have budgeted. Oh, maybe something can move back, or we can slide things around. This isn't exactly to trails, but we say with courts, right? This allows us to do art on the courts because now we know when we're doing them, right? It allows us to partner better with capital projects. So when, Tyler says, the planning department says, hey, we're going to be planning on doing this reconstruction, then in a year, then we know, okay, we're not going to seal coat that section this year. So it gives us, in the rigidity, it gives us flexibility, or in the knowledge, it gives us the flexibility to move things around. So I think that's a really good point, and I would say yes. And I'm excited to actually be able to implement that sort of flexibility within the system.
Awesome.
Great.
Awesome. Dan, is your hand still up?
Sorry, it's down.
So Dan, where do we go from here? That was a fabulous presentation. I'm a teacher, and I might need you to come over here and do a couple presentations for me, because that was rocking.
Well, I have a question. This is Dan, and I have a question. This is partially for Matthew Deardahl, and but I think this is worth acknowledging, this report and the hopefulness of it, and that to be able to present something to our council and Public Works, that this is something that would be good to consider for the city trails. And Matthew, do you have any thoughts about that? I'd be willing to write something up, but I'd like to hear from you first.
Yeah, I guess I'll just say I'm as impressed as everyone else has articulated. So, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what that would look like in terms of what you're suggesting, Dan, but this would be great for the city to have this level of documentation and planning.
I'll figure it out.
So with that, Dan, are you writing up a proposal for this?
I'm not writing a proposal. I just wanted to offer some accommodation for the efforts that has been done here, and for the city to consider doing something similar to this to city trails that don't have a program that I understand that does any kind of repairs. So I think it'd be a good thing to implement. It's something that we just aren't. There's no vehicle there to fix a trail. So on 18th Avenue Northeast, which was done last year as part of a city reconstruction, there's a half-mile of trail that's been sitting there since 1997. And it's sitting, it's 8 feet wide, it's undersized, it's busted up since it's been there since 97, and it's sitting on developer land, so nobody wanted to do anything about it, and so it will continue to age and to fall apart compared to doing something like a seal coating that would extend its life. So I think that situation exists in other parts of Minneapolis as well, on city trails.
Hey, Dan, this is Chris Kartheiser real quick. I just wanted to jump in to say, I think, I don't think there's necessarily anything outside of our normal path forward of a resolution. If there's something that you want there, I mean, this body advises the city on what they would like to see. And so by putting that advisement through in a resolution of what you were saying, that might be kind of the next step, if you're hoping that the city would kind of take this on, and then from there we can figure out kind of who would consider that. But as opposed to like jumping to council or something like that, I think maybe that first step would just be putting together that resolution and weighing it at the full BAC next month and kind of seeing where that goes.
That's exactly what I was going to do, Chris.
Thank you so much, Dan, and thank you, Chris. Anybody else have any other questions?
I would just say, related to the any type of resolution that you all may put forward, the park board isn't expecting any resolution for us, so we don't need that to kind of move forward, other than kudos are always nice, I guess. So it is very appreciated to hear that. That's all I got.
Well,
I just did want to say one more thing. I think Dan had mentioned trail widths and stuff, and some of the trails that we have were designed decades ago and installed decades ago, when we didn't quite understand exactly how many people would actually be using them in today's era of the bicycle. But one thing that we do have to kind of be conscious of as we design these things is that we are putting pavement into parks and into natural spaces, and a lot of times those natural spaces are right up against water bodies and wetlands and things like that. So we just have to be conscious about how much impermeable surface and how much asphalt and non-natural materials we are putting in the parks. So we would love to have some wider trails. We just have to be kind of conscious of where we put those, and we don't want to degrade lake qualities or landscape quality for a much wider trail. That's all.
Thank you for that. That's a very good point. Always have to consider that. Does anybody have anything else? Otherwise, I am going to let you go. Anyone? Okay, thank you so much for your presentation, and please involve us as you need us. Come to attend another meeting. Use us for ideas or any suggestions.
Yeah, we so kind of a part of this, and kind of the reason it didn't really click in my brain to say, hey, Chris, we need to present, is because this is really a maintenance type activity. And we aren't moving trails, we aren't redesigning trails, we aren't adding stop signs or any kind of functionality. It's really just a longevity and maintenance thing. So my apologies for not kind of making that connection and wanting to grab your all's input on this, but we will going forward, absolutely. And as far as capital projects on my end, we've heard several park board capital projects for new trails or trail adjustments, and we'll keep kind of coming to this group with those as they pop up.
Oh, thank you. Dan, I see your hand.
Yeah, just in closing, Tyler, is this something that may become a CIP like the Parkway Paving Program? That's an annual. Are you going that way, or is it just?
That's kind of what this is. It's laying out a budget for certain areas given certain qualities. So we've inserted our equity matrix that we use for distributing park funding throughout the neighborhood park system into this pavement system, as well as pavement quality index, that type of thing. So it is kind of a CIP in itself, but technically this would be built into asset management's budget, which would then be built into the park board's CIP.
Okay, so the Parkway Paving Program has an annual $750,000 budget that goes before the CLIC every year, and it is highly approved, highly rated each year, because people love their park. We love our parkways. We want them fixed. And if you were going to go that route as a separate line item, I think you would get a lot of support from the Capital Long Range and Improvement Committee. I don't know if that's the way you want to go or anything, but FYI.
I think, yeah, Chris, I'm not sure if you know more than I do, but the parkways are really maintained by the city of Minneapolis. They do parkway paving and lighting, and in I guess the flip-flop return of that is the park board does all the city boulevard trees and stuff like that. So I think it's going to be removed from any type of parkway budgeting and the quick process and what the city goes through to grab those funds. But certainly it would be in our yearly budgeting process for the park board itself.
Thank you.
The one thing that I would just quickly add to that is what I think is really valuable, especially about the park board CIP, is that folks are able to look at it and go, okay, my park is Bryant Square Park. I know that there's money set aside in a couple years, and I know roughly what it's for. And I think, as Tyler mentioned, this program hopefully would mirror that in that we would say, okay, here's how all the trails lay out, and here's when these interventions when we're kind of targeting these interventions to happen. So as Lake of the Isles is used, really, some bad, like if someone was able to go and look and go, oh yeah, there's kind of a patch and repair project at Lake of the Isles next year. Like, great, I feel much better about that because it's pretty dangerous. Or if you feel that and you don't see it on there, then that's where kind of some of the more conversations happen. So I think bringing some visibility to this, which is what, a big part of, at least from my perspective, our capital or our CIP does from a planning perspective, brings that down to these maintenance and rehab programs. So.
Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any more hands. So again, thank you for your presentation. Fabulous. And keep us in the loop as you wish.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.